Hey everyone, my name is McKenna, also known as Sylphic Studios, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And today I'm bringing you a super special custom doll. So a couple of months ago, my little sister asked me if I could make her a doll of THANOS from Squid Game for her birthday. And her birthday was actually last month, so I've been working on this doll for quite a long time. I just wanted to wait to post him until the third season came out because it was just a month away and it felt fitting, so that's why I'm posting him the day the season comes out. So without further ado, let's get into the custom doll, starting with prepping. So working on this custom was actually quite a challenge because this was my first time making a male doll, and it was actually quite different than what I was used to. So for his base doll, I decided to use G3 Heath Burns. I wasn't too sure whether to use him or Deuce, so I asked my little sister and she told me she would rather have Heath, and I think that in the end she was spot on. His face mold is pretty much perfect for THANOS. So as always, to start everything, I'm just removing the head from the body. And to do that, I'm just soaking his head in some boiling hot water for a minute or two and then pulling it off like that. Now the next step was to remove his hair, and this was actually way more difficult than I thought it would be. So after messing with it for a little bit, it just wasn't coming off, so I let him sit in the boiling water for even longer, probably around 5 minutes or so. And then I was just going in and trying my best to pull the hair off, and it was really difficult. I did find that if I squeezed the head like sideways like that, it was a little bit easier to get my fingers underneath the middle part. So after I squeezed it a lot, I was able to get like a hole underneath the hair like this, and I was able to put my needle nose pliers under it. And this allowed me to kind of like get a good hold on it so I can pull on it with my pliers. But surprisingly, this still was not enough to get his dang hair off. And then after I finally got it off after messing with it for so long, I realized the reason why I couldn't get it off from the bottom part of his head here was because it's like a peg in his head. It's like sort of connected to it, so I kind of had to pull on it and just twist it off. So after all of that work, here is his head completely flattened. I say that I give him a lobotomy, but I know that's not the correct term. His head just looks like a race car track or something. It's like so flat. So in order to fix his flat head, I figured it would be easiest to take some epoxy sculpt and just round out his head at the top. So that's exactly what I did. And if you don't know, epoxy sculpt is like a two-part clay that you mix together and it forms like a really sturdy, hard clay. And it's really good for dolls because it air dries and it also sticks to doll plastic really well. So if you ever need to do some sculpting work, epoxy sculpt is a really good option. And to flatten out his head here, I just took some epoxy sculpt and flattened it out so I can put it over his head hole here. And I wanted to make sure that I had enough to fill the hole, but not too much to make his head like super round. I didn't want his head to look like an egg, so I made sure that I was mindful about the amount of clay that I was using to fill in the holes. This is what his head looked like once it was all filled. That's a phrase I never thought that I'd say. But yeah, this is what it looks like. It's still pretty flat just because I didn't want him to look like an egg, like I said. And I figured the rounder that I got with it, the harder it would be to actually glue on his hair later, so I kept it pretty flat still. And then the next day, after I let it air dry, I went in with my sanding block and just sanded everything as smooth as I could get it. After I sanded his head, I went in with my acetone to remove his previous face paint. I always like removing factory paint on dolls. I think it's super satisfying. And I've actually never seen sculpts like Bear sculpt before, so I was really excited to see what his face looked like. Once I removed all of his factory paint, it was time to get into one of the most time-consuming parts, which is the body repaint. So since Heath is orange, I had to repaint his skin tone to look like THANOS. And the paint that I always use for this is just the color Peach from Apple Barrel, and I always use satin finish paint. I find that compared to matte or glossy, it just gives like the best, smoothest results. And for some reason with matte paint, I always have this issue with it just chipping off, and I don't like that and I don't want to mess with that. So I prefer using satin paint. I have an entire skin repaint tutorial if you guys would like to watch it that I made last year. It is pretty old, I will have to make an updated version for you, but my method is pretty much the exact same, so you're not missing out on any new information over here. This was what his body was looking like after one coat of paint. And since I water down my paint, it is always a trust the process moment, so after a couple coats, this is what he was looking like. You can't see the orange peeking through at all, which is awesome. So now to seal everything, I'm just taking some watered down matte Mod Podge and painting everything over. And once the Mod Podge dried, I also sprayed him with some Mr. Super Clear outside. Once his body was done, I reconnected his head to his body, and then I started the same process on his face. I always repaint my heads after I connect them with the body, because if you're doing a skin repaint, especially like a full skin repaint, the pressure of reconnecting it could definitely make the paint on the face crack, or you could just mess up the paint in general. And we definitely don't want that after all the hard work that we did. Once his face was all done, I moved on to painting his scalp. Usually this is something I do before I repaint my skin, but because I had used all of the clay and everything and he has short hair, I decided to do it afterward. This also allows me to just be more precise with where I'm putting my paint, because if I were to make a mistake, it would be way easier to fix it this way. Because if I did the black first and then painted too much black and had to paint over it with the light color, it would take way too many coats and not look good, so I always prefer to go in with my dark colors after my lights if possible. This is what he looked like after he got his scalp paint. I did go in off camera and fix some of those edges, but now it's time to get into the fun part, which is the face up. So this face up actually kind of intimidated me because I had never done a male doll before, and sketching out their faces is definitely a big change compared to sketching out my regular faces, because I can't do my big bold eyeliner and my big long lashes. That's kind of like my staple of my face ups and my style in my eyes. So trying to translate my style into like a male face was definitely pretty difficult for me, but I think that in the end he looks pretty good and pretty true to my style, so I'm pretty proud of that. It just took a lot of trial and error, if I'm honest. I also went ahead and made sure I sketched out all of his tattoos on his hands as well. In these clips I didn't include his skull tattoo, but don't worry, I also added that later. But now after his face sketch is done, it's time to go in with my colored pencils and add all of the color. And for this face up, I made sure that I went in with a lot of shading to define all of his features, especially his aegyosal and his eyelid. I also wanted him to have more of like a softer eye look compared to my normal dolls, like with the stark black. So before I went in and outlined his eyes with my black pencil, I went in with this dark color first. It's just like a super dark brown, and I definitely feel like it helped soften up his eyes, which is what I was going for. I also made sure to take some chalk pastel and define his jawbone and his cheekbones. For the majority of his face up, I did just use colored pencils and pastels, but for his entire inside of his eye and some extra highlights, I did use some paint. Here I'm just going in with a lighter brown paint to add some definition into his eyes, and then I'm going in with my black pastel to add some shadow. I did have to do his eye highlights off camera just because I have to get so close, but for his eye shine I decided to go with the circle because he continually votes to stay in the games. And then these are his hand tattoos that were done entirely in colored pencil. Now that his face up's done, it's time to get into his hair. So for his hair, because his entire head is full of clay, I kind of can't give him a reroot, so my next best bet is yarn wefts. So first things first, as always, to start my yarn weft process, I am just cutting it all into these long strands, and taking 4 at a time, I am just tying them in a knot over this crochet hook. I actually don't think it's considered a knot, but just tie it over the hook like so, and then I repeat this process until the entire hook is covered. I ended up needing to do this twice so I had enough hair for his entire head. So if you also use a crochet hook like me, I recommend making at least 2 of these to make sure you have enough hair. Once all my hair was tied, I'm just taking my wire pet brush and brushing it out from the bottom. Always make sure that you brush it out from the bottom and not the top to avoid any breakage, because if you brush it out from the top, trust me, the yarn will just break off and you'll have super uneven wefts. After everything's brushed out, I'm just taking my tiny little flattening iron and flattening it all. I do this a couple times, just going back and forth flat ironing it and then brushing it out, just to make sure that it's as straight and as smooth as I can possibly get it. Once I was happy with how my hair was looking, it's time to actually make the wefts out of them. So I'm just taking some Mod Podge and putting it on my little rubber mat here, and then sandwiching the hair between another layer of Mod Podge. I always use a crap ton of Mod Podge here just to make sure that there's enough glue, because the last thing you want is to actually take your wefts off and then for only half of them to be glued together because you didn't use enough. I let my wefts dry overnight, and then the next day I'm just taking my little scissors and cutting them into nice formular. Is that actually a word? Formular? Sometimes I literally can't talk. Anyway, I just meant nice formed rectangles. I think that makes sense. And then after I did that, I'm just taking some tacky glue and actually attaching them to his head starting from the back here. Before I glued them down, I did put them up to his head and measure them and cut them to size, just to make sure that they fit. And then once I did a couple on the back, I went ahead and did the front just to make sure that everything was kind of even and looking good. I've never done male hair before, especially not like short guy hair like this. It like sticks up, so I had no idea how I was going to tackle this, but in the end I honestly think it looks pretty dang good. So I don't know if this is like the best method for hair like this, but this is the method that I crafted up and it worked for me. So I guess if I make another guy doll in the future with similar hair, I will just fine-tune my method. After I had a lot of strands glued down, I took the end of my metal comb and heated it up with my tiny straightening iron, that's what it's called, and used it to kind of like back comb the strands, kinda. Not back comb, but basically heat them the other way to cover the weft portion, if that makes sense. It's the same method and same thought process as if you were doing like a normal yarn weft part line or something like that. So I went in and just repeated that for every single singular strand to make sure they all were staying up straight. I did run out of hair, so like I said, make more than you think you'll need. I only made one, so I had to make another one and finish his hair off camera. So now it's time to get into his clothing. So for his clothes, I had zero pattern for this. I patterned everything from scratch, which I'm actually pretty proud of. For the longest time, my brain just could not wrap around how patterns worked. So now that I'm able to actually eyeball my own patterns and measure them properly is actually pretty impressive to me, and I'm proud of that. But if you're curious on how I make my own patterns, I actually don't really know. I don't really have a good answer for you. I'm sorry. But that's only because I don't really know what I'm doing myself. I kind of just know after making so many doll clothes what patterns should look like for certain pieces of clothing. So taking that plus the actual measurements of the doll and using the doll itself as a mannequin, I'm able to kind of eyeball my own patterns, and sometimes it does take a couple of iterations. Like this jacket I actually made twice because the first one was too small. But I feel like that's where the fun is. Like if you don't do it right the first time, you just learn from that. And then once you're done, you have a new skill. I still use other pre-made patterns if it's applicable, like for certain things like my Alice dresses. But for things like this where I can't really look up G3 male body sweatsuit set kind of thing, that's just a case where I'll need to pattern it myself, and that's completely okay. It's a lot more work, but it feels very rewarding in the end. But anyway, now that you've seen me talk through the entire process, these are what the pants were looking like once they were on. Now, like I said earlier, sometimes things need to go through a couple of iterations. Like these pants, ideally, I would have wanted the waistband to be a tiny bit higher, but since he's wearing a jacket anyway, you won't be able to see it regardless. So that's just a little something I wanted to point out, but that's just a simple fix, like adding a couple centimeters at the top. Before his jacket, like I said earlier, I did have to make it twice, and most of the footage that I have is from the first jacket that it was way too small, and I don't want to show you that, so I apologize. But here's some footage of his jacket before I sewed up the sides. I painted the white stripes on his jacket off camera just because I didn't want to show you that twice. But now with the jacket done, let's get into his shoes. So as you guys probably know, all Squid Game characters just wear white plain Vans. And I unfortunately could not find any shoes that would fit G3 guys that looked like plain Vans. So I asked my little sister if these tennis shoes would be fine if they were just painted white, and she said that was okay. So I took these shoes, cut off those socks, and I painted them white. And if you're curious, these are Deuce's shoes from that G3 line that came out a super long time ago, the sports one. I forgot what it's called, like the big sports pack with all of them in it. Once I was happy with how white his shoes were, I sealed them with some Mod Podge, and now it's time to get into his finishing touches. So if you know Thanos, you know that he has a lot of piercings and rings. So for his 2 ear piercings, I took tiny jump rings and split them open like this. And then once I sized them on him, I just glued them on. I attached his chain necklace with this jump ring and then added his cross off camera. And this is what he was looking like with all of his cute accessories. Oh, and I also forgot to mention I painted his nails off camera as well. But wait, we're not completely done yet because finally we need to make him his stand. So for his stand, I decided to paint it blue to match his patch on his chest. And since it's a circle off camera, I cut out some white vinyl and ironed it on to make it look like the Squid Game symbol, which I think is pretty cool. I wanted to tie in the whole Squid Game shapes and the circle for them staying in there, you know what I mean? And I thought that was a cool way to do it since the stand was already circular. So yeah, with the stand completely painted and all of his finishing touches done, that means that he is complete, and it's time for his close-ups. I had such a fun time making this doll, and I hope that you guys had fun watching this video. Thank you so much to my little sister for asking me to make him for you. I will speak for her when I say that she absolutely loves him, and now she has a special little shelf on her wall for him. So I would say this is a great birthday present. I'm patting myself on the back. I'm kidding. But yeah, like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope that the new season doesn't break us as much as I think it probably will. I guess we'll all know once this is uploaded. Real quick before I do my outro, I did want to make a little announcement. I decided that I'll be pivoting from completing my next 2 shop dolls into just doing commissions instead for the next month or 2. I'll still be working on my other dolls behind the scenes, but for now I thought it'd be best for me to just work on commissions as often as I can. So with that being said, my commission submissions will be opening today at 12 p.m. MST, and they'll be open until Sunday at midnight, which means like Monday morning, so like until the end of this weekend basically. All of my commission information and pricing will be linked in the description on my website, so please go check that out if you're interested. I'll also link my submission form as well, but I'll be taking that out of my description once everything is over, so if that's not there anymore, I'm sorry, you might have missed it. But for this time around, I'll be opening up 3 full doll commission slots as well as 2 face-up commissions, which I've never done face-up commissions before, so I'm excited for that. Like I said, all the info will be on my website, but you can also ask me if you have any other questions. So yeah, I can't wait to work with you guys again, and I'm really excited to see who I'll be making this time around. As always, if you'd like to support me or get some behind the scenes content, please don't forget to go check out my Patreon, linked in the description. I do offer a free tier, you just have to scroll down and click join for free instead of at the top for some reason. So you can join for free just to see some behind the scenes stuff and some early YouTube viewing. Or you can subscribe to one of my paid tiers and get some extra benefits, especially the 5% discount on commission and shop dolls for the $5 tier. That one's definitely a bang for your buck if you're interested in getting a doll from me, but absolutely no pressure. And as always, a huge thank you over to my patrons over on my Patreon. Pumpkin Tushy, Morgan, Samuel, and Daisy, thank you all so much for all the support. I love you all so much. I'm not entirely sure what next week's YouTube video will be yet, I still have to figure that out. I'm not sure if I'll have a custom done by then, but we'll see. If not, I'll probably upload another unboxing or something. I have the werecats I have to unbox, so I'll probably upload those, actually. But anyway, I'll stop yapping now. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys have a good morning, night, evening, or whatever it is wherever you are, and I'll see you guys in next week's video.